Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. At 6:45 p.m., the only sound in Terrence Caldwell's home office was his laptop fan and the steady tap of keys. October darkness settled over Columbus, Ohio, earlier than it should have, and the streetlight outside threw a pale stripe across his desk. He had been reviewing quarterly projections for his firm's expansion for hours, but the columns looked like they were sliding. Terrence leaned back, rubbed his scalp, and stared at a framed photo from their 10th anniversary trip to Key West. He and his wife, Nia, smiled like nothing could change. His phone buzzed with a new text from Nia. Working late again. Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait for dinner. Terrence read it twice, then scanned their thread the way a person checks a receipt they already know is wrong. The same pattern showed up across weeks. Short messages, late nights, no detail. 6 months earlier, after Nia became a creative director, small cancellations became routine. Sunday brunch disappeared. Movie nights got rescheduled, then dropped. Evening walks turned into her saying she was too tired. Nia used to talk through every moment of her day. Now she spoke in blanks. Terrence's questions always landed on the same wall. How was work? Got busy. Who was in a meeting? Got the team. When he asked about her boss, Sterling Vaughn, she shifted topics like she was turning a page. Terrence remembered the night Nia announced her promotion. They celebrated at a downtown steakhouse, and Sterling just happened to be there. Sterling's eyes stayed on Nia longer than a congratulation required. His hand rested on her shoulder during photos, then lingered. Terrence told himself it was normal executive charm, then swallowed the discomfort and called it support. The chime of the security system interrupted his thoughts. Nia was home early, which did not match her text. Terrence heard her heels crossing hardwood downstairs and the solid thud of her bag on the kitchen counter. "Terrence, you home?" she called. He left his office and went down without announcing himself again. In the kitchen, Nia stood at the counter in a fitted navy dress, hair done, makeup set, but her hands moved fast, as if she needed to keep them busy. Terrence stopped in the doorway and watched her mouth tighten before she smiled. "I thought you were working late," Terrence said. Nia startled and pulled her hand away from the phone on the counter, as if it had burned her. "The meeting ended early," she said, eyes shifting past him. Sterling had another engagement. Terrence kept his tone even. "Seems like every late night involves him." Nia's jaw flexed. "He's my boss." She began unloading her purse like she was building a distraction. Lip gloss, receipts, a folded flyer, a keycard sleeve. Her phone lay face down, but the screen flashed with notifications every few seconds. Terrence opened the refrigerator and watched her angle her body to block his view. "Have you eaten?" he asked. "I can warm up the lasagna." "I grabbed something at the office," Nia replied quickly. She kept arranging things, then rearranging them. Terrence pointed with his chin. "Your phone keeps lighting up." Nia's eyes jumped to it, and the look that crossed her face was not irritating. I panicked. She smoothed her expression into something pleasant. "Just the team," she said. "Last-minute questions about tomorrow's presentation. I really need a shower." She turned toward the stairs before he could answer. "Don't wait up," she added, already halfway up. Terrence remained in the kitchen, alone with the flashing blue glow on granite. In 12 years of marriage, Nia had never asked him to check her messages. She kept her phone locked, claiming client confidentiality, and she stayed consistent about it. Tonight the phone sat unlocked. That difference landed like a loud sound in a quiet room. The screen lit again, and Terrence reached for it with a hand that felt detached from his body. He told himself he only needed to confirm nothing urgent was happening, because that excuse let him move. The preview line froze him. "Missing you already. Tonight was incredible. Can still taste." Terrence opened the thread. The full message finished the sentence in plain language. Sterling wrote that he could still taste her and asked when he could see her again. Nia answered, "Soon. Maybe tomorrow after the team meeting. Terrence thinks I'm staying late for the Henderson presentation." Terrence scrolled, and the thread turned into a calendar of deception. Room numbers, times. "Meet me at the Westlake Hotel." Use the side entrance. You look perfect in that dress today. Terrence's breath shortened, but his thumb kept moving. The photos hit next. Nia had sent selfies taken in a high-rise apartment, her arm around Sterling's neck, Sterling's hand on her waist, both smiling in the kind of privacy married people reserve for home. Terrence recognized the skyline from a brochure Nia once brought home about new client meetings. There were messages about quick office encounters and not enough time. Every line made the betrayal feel organized, not accidental. Terrence's eyes stung, but he did not blink. He kept reading because stopping would mean stepping back into a world where he could pretend. 3 days earlier, the tone shifted. Nia wrote, "My doctor called today." Sterling replied, "Everything okay?" Nia, "No. I tested positive for herpes. It's incurable. How could you not tell me you had this?" Sterling, "I'm sorry. I didn't think so. I haven't had an outbreak in years." Nia, "You exposed me without telling me. What if I've already—" The message cut off in the preview, but Terrence saw the rest when he opened it fully. Nia had typed fear about her marriage and her health. Sterling responded with medication suggestions, like he was discussing allergies. Upstairs, shower water ran, steady and careless. Terrence stood at the counter, gripping the edge for balance. His marriage, his trust, and his body had all been placed at risk by decisions made in secret. He did not shout. He did not throw the phone. He began taking screenshots, methodical and precise. He saved the message thread, every photo, every timestamp, and every plan. He sent them to himself, then backed them up again. He found a note about the company gala and a booked suite at the hotel hosting it. The way they treated the gala, like Cover told him, they felt untouchable. Terrence took that as instruction, not insult. When the shower stopped, he closed the thread and placed the phone exactly where it had been, at the same angle, face down. He moved to the living room and sat in the dark without turning on a lamp. His own phone felt heavy in his pocket, full of evidence that had changed the shape of his life. 40 minutes later, Nia came downstairs wearing a silk robe, hair damp, her expensive shampoo scent filling the hallway. She paused when she saw him in the dark. "Why are you sitting here with no lights on?" she asked, trying for casualness. Terrence watched her face and thought about how many nights she had returned home like this. "Any important messages?" Nia asked, keeping her voice light. Terrence answered evenly, "No, nothing important." Nia shifted her weight, then nodded too quickly. "I'm heading to bed," she said. "Don't stay up too late." She walked upstairs, and Terrence listened to her steps fade. He stayed seated, eyes open because sleep was not available. He opened his phone and checked the screenshots again, not because he doubted them, but because he needed his mind to accept the facts. The words about the disease stayed in the center of his attention like a warning sign. He understood then that forgiveness could not be the first step because safety had to come first. Over the next few days, Terrence ran his life like an audit. He acted normal at breakfast. He answered with sure and okay when Nia mentioned work. He watched her check her phone and tilt the screen away. He noted the nights she left for meetings and came home with a different energy. He installed a simple location tracker on the shared car account he managed for their insurance and saw her routes shift. 3 nights in 1 week, her phone's location landed at a luxury condo building in the city's riverfront district. She called it the office in her texts. The map said otherwise. Terrence captured the screenshots and saved them beside the message thread. Nia tried to reshape their routine with sentences that sounded like scripts. "The Henderson launch is huge. Sterling needs me in the room. I might be late again." Terrence replied with short words because he wanted her to keep talking without suspicion. At one breakfast, Nia pushed eggs around her plate and said, "The company gala is next week." She did not look at him when she added, "I don't think you should come this year. It's just business. Clients, presentations, boring shop talk." Terrence nodded and said, "Whatever makes your night easier." Relief moved across her face fast and then disappeared. That relief told Terrence everything. In the screenshots, he already knew she and Sterling planned the gala as a doorway to another hotel room. Terrence began assembling his evidence like a case file. He created folders labeled by date and type: texts, photos, location proof, hotel receipts. He found a receipt folded in Nia's purse for a Westlake hotel room service charge on a night she claimed she was stuck at the office. He photographed it, then returned it to the same pocket. He did not ask her about it, because he did not want explanations. He wanted clarity. He also scheduled a full STD panel for himself at a clinic across town under his own name and paid out of pocket. He told the receptionist he needed the earliest appointment available. He did not mention Nia. He kept his voice steady because steady voices get answered faster. The day before the gala, Nia wore a red dress Terrence had never seen. She stood at the kitchen mirror applying lipstick, checking her phone between strokes. "I might be late again tonight," she said. "A lot to finalize before tomorrow." Terrence sipped coffee and answered, "Of course." He asked, "That Henderson presentation?" Nia paused for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "Yes. Huge opportunity." Terrence watched her pick up her keys and adjust her earrings. "Good luck," he said. Nia leaned in and kissed his cheek. "Love you," she whispered. Terrence did not respond with the same words. He watched her leave and understood it would be one of the last ordinary exits in their marriage. That evening, Nia texted, "Working late. Important client meeting. Don't wait up." Terrence opened the tracker and saw her location moving towards Sterling's condo again. He added the screenshot to his folder and felt something inside him settle into a colder shape. Once, proof would have knocked him flat. Now it has become fuel. He opened his laptop and drafted an email address to the company board, HR, and several client contacts listed on the gala program. He attached the evidence in organized files and wrote a short summary with dates and times. He included the messages about the STD because that fact changed the issue from betrayal to reckless harm. He saved the draft, but did not send it yet. Rain tapped the window while he sat at his desk. Terrence stood, looked into the dark street, and imagined Nia in Sterling's apartment using the same smile she used at family dinners. His phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number that matched Sterling's style. "You were incredible tonight. The gala suite is booked. Presidential floor." Nia replied in the thread Terrence had already captured. "Terrence has no idea. He thinks I'll be networking." Terrence stared at the line until it stopped feeling like shock and started feeling like instruction. They believed the lie was complete. He planned to let them keep believing that until the moment the room turned. The morning of the gala arrived clear and cold. Nia moved through the house with practiced calm, packing a clutch and checking the mirror. "Tonight is important," she said. "Everything needs to go smoothly." Terrence nodded as if he agreed. He had already arranged his own part. He confirmed his clinic appointment for the next day and forwarded the evidence to his personal attorney, Lionel Graves, with a short message: "Protect my assets. Prepare divorce filing. Emergency." Lionel replied within minutes. "Understood. Do not confront it alone. Keep copies. We can file immediately after the event." Terrence printed the most critical screenshots and sealed them in an envelope he placed in his inner jacket pocket. He kept the envelope flat so it would not show. That afternoon, Nia texted, "Pre-gala drinks with the team. I'm staying close to the hotel." Terrence answered with a single line, "Have a good night." He dressed in his charcoal suit, the one he wore to company functions as the supportive spouse. He looked at his wedding ring and decided he would remove it when the truth was out, not before. He left the house and drove to Baltimore for the event, arriving early enough to breathe before stepping inside. The hotel, the Harbor Grand, stood bright along the water with a lobby full of polished stone and soft music. Terrence walked in with his shoulders squared and his phone fully charged. A hostess with a tablet greeted him. Her name tag read Kayla. "Good evening, sir," she said. "Are you here for the Vaughn Creative Gala?" Terrence replied, "Yes." Terrence Caldwell. Kayla's smile flickered. "Mrs. Caldwell said you wouldn't be attending," she said, then quickly added, "but I'll confirm your seat." Terrence watched her fingers move fast across the screen. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "No, sir," Kayla said. "Of course not. Please go right in." The small stumble told Terrence Nia had tried to control the guest list the way she tried to control the story. He walked toward the ballroom doors and felt the weight of his envelope against his chest like a steady pulse. Inside, the ballroom looked like every corporate celebration Terrence had attended. Round tables with white linen, waiters in black vests, and quiet laughter that sounded practiced. Crystal chandeliers hung above the crowd, and a string quartet played near a corner stage. Terrence scanned the room and found Nia near the bar immediately. She wore a deep burgundy gown that made her the center of attention, and her diamonds caught the light with every movement. Sterling Vaughn stood too close, one hand resting at her lower back, his face angled toward her ear as he spoke. Nia smiled at him with a softness Terrence had not seen directed at him in months. Their posture looked like comfort, not caution. Terrence took note of that, because comfort is what people show when they believe they are safe. A woman approached Terrence with a champagne flute and wide eyes. "Terrence," she said, "I'm Janelle Hart. I work with Nia." Terrence recognized her as one of the creative leads. Janelle's gaze jumped between him and the bar. "I thought Nia said you weren't coming." Terrence replied, "Change of plans. I didn't want to miss the Henderson presentation after all her late nights." Janelle swallowed. "Right," she said, but her tone suggested she knew more than she wanted to say. Terrence kept his face neutral. "Janelle, does everyone know what's really been happening?" Janelle's grip tightened on her glass. "It's complicated," she whispered. Terrence answered quietly. It was only complicated because people chose comfort over truth. He left her standing there, pale and silent. Sterling stepped onto the small stage and clinked a utensil against his champagne flute. "If I could have everyone's attention," he said. The room softened into quiet. Nia stood beside him, her smile bright and fixed, as if she was ready to present an award. Sterling continued, "Thank you for being here tonight. Before we begin the Henderson campaign," Terrence cut in from the center aisle with a voice that carried, "I have something to present first." Heads turned. The silence sharpened. Nia's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. She stared at Terrence as if she had seen a ghost. "Terrence," she said, her voice thin, "what are you doing here?" Terrence walked forward with his phone in hand and did not slow down. "Supporting my wife," Terrence replied. "That's what I've been doing for years." Sterling's smile tightened. "This isn't appropriate," Sterling said. "We're in the middle of a corporate program." Terrence stopped within clear sight of the stage. "Middle of what?" he asked. "More lies? Another cover story?" He turned slightly so the nearest tables could hear him without effort. "Does your wife know you're sleeping with my wife?" A wave of gasps moved through the room. Sterling's expression cracked, just enough to expose anger beneath it. Nia shook her head fast and whispered, "Please." Terrence raised his phone. "I have the messages," he said. "I have hotel receipts. I have photos. I have location proof. I also have the part where you discussed an incurable infection like it was a scheduling problem." Sterling stepped forward. "Security," he snapped, voice tight. Terrence didn't flinch. "Before anyone touches me," he said, "this evidence is already prepared to go to the board, HR, and clients. I also sent copies to my attorney." Sterling's eyes narrowed. Terrence continued, "There's something else people deserve to know. Sterling, tell them what you gave my wife and didn't disclose." The room went still enough that Terrence could hear a fork clink against a plate. Nia's face was drained of color. Sterling's mouth opened, then closed. Terrence spoke again, flat and clear. "Herpes. She confronted you in writing. You admitted you had it and didn't tell her. You placed me at risk, too." No one laughed. No one coughed. Even the quartet had stopped playing. A woman stepped out from the crowd near the stage, her posture straight, eyes sharp. "Sterling," she said, voice shaking with controlled rage. "What did he just say?" Terrence recognized her from company photos. Monique Vaughn. Sterling's shoulders stiffened. "Monique, I can explain," he started. Monique lifted her hand and struck him hard across the face. The sound was loud enough to echo. "Explain what?" she demanded. "Explain why my husband is sleeping with an employee? Explain why I'm hearing about an STD in front of a ballroom." Sterling's cheeks flushed. Nia made a small sound, half sob and half breath. Terrence unlocked his email draft, looked down once, and pressed send. His message moved out into the world with attachments that could not be unshared. Phones began to buzz on tables around him as notifications arrived. Nia's voice rose, strained and desperate. "You ruined everything," she said. Mascara began to streak down her face. Terrence looked at her without softening. "No," he answered. "You did." He pulled his wedding ring off and held it between two fingers for a moment, then let it fall. The metal ping hit the marble and rolled, stopping near the edge of the stage. Terrence's words stayed calm. "Every time you met him, you made a decision. Every time you lied, you chose this outcome." Security reached him then, two men in suits moving cautiously, unsure if they were handling a disruption or a legal problem. Terrence lifted his hand slightly. "I'm leaving," he said. "I've said what needed to be said." He turned toward the exit while the ballroom broke into overlapping voices behind him. In the lobby, the air felt colder, quieter, like the building itself had stepped away from the noise. Terrence walked toward the doors without looking back. He heard quick footsteps and a voice calling his name. "Terrence, wait," Nia pleaded. She caught up, robe of composure gone, face wet, breath uneven. "Please," she said. "Let me explain. Just 5 minutes." Terrence turned and spoke in the same steady tone he used at work. "Explain what?" he asked. "The months of lies, or the nights you came home and got into our bed after being with him?" Nia reached toward his arm. Terrence stepped back so her hand met only air. "I made a mistake," she said. Terrence shook his head once. "A mistake is missing a turn," he replied. "You ran a whole separate life." He pointed at her phone in her clutch. "You wrote it down yourself." Nia whispered, "I love you." Terrence answered, "You loved the stability while you chased something else." Sterling burst into the lobby, face dark with rage and humiliation. "Caldwell," he snapped, "you destroyed my marriage, my reputation." Terrence looked at him and kept his voice low. "You destroyed your own life," he said. "You chose to sleep with my wife, you chose to hide an infection, and you chose to use company resources to do it." Sterling stepped closer as if intimidation could rewrite evidence. Terrence didn't move. "Stay away from me," Terrence said. "Any contact goes through lawyers now." Nia's sobs sharpened into pleading sounds. Terrence turned and walked out into the cold night. The city air hit his face like a reset. His phone buzzed repeatedly with messages, but he ignored them. He got into his car and drove without music, without calls, focused on the simple act of leaving. Back home, Terrence poured a drink and sat at his desk. The framed anniversary photo still stood there. He turned it face down, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a practical one. He didn't need reminders placed at eye level. A news alert flashed on his phone later. CEO of Vaughn Creative steps down amid scandal. Terrence read it once, then turned the phone off. He understood the next few days would carry more noise than he wanted. He removed his tie and dropped it into a trash bin like an item with no purpose. His body still shook in small waves, but his decisions remained solid. He opened a new file on his laptop labeled Divorce, typed the date, and saved it. He didn't cry. Crying required a belief that things could return. Terrence had already accepted they would not. The next morning, Terrence sat in his office with coffee and watched notifications pile up. Headlines spread fast. Marketing executive forced out after affair. Board launches investigation. Gala erupts after public accusation. His inbox filled with messages from people he barely knew, asking if he was okay, as if a simple word could cover what happened. At 9:15 a.m., the doorbell rang. On the security feed, Nia stood on the porch wearing last night's gown, wrinkled and stained, hair loose, makeup smeared. She looked smaller than she had in the ballroom. "Terrence," she said into the intercom, voice cracked, "please. 5 minutes. I need to talk." Terrence pressed the button. "Contact me through my lawyer," he said. "We're past talking." Nia cried and leaned her forehead against the door. "I lost everything," she said. "They asked for my resignation this morning. Security walked me out. My email is disabled. Everyone treats me like I'm toxic." Terrence didn't raise his voice. "Did you think about the consequences when you were meeting him in hotels?" he asked. Nia struck the door lightly with her fist. "I made a mistake," she repeated. Terrence answered, "You made a series of choices." Nia wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Sterling's wife changed the locks," she said. "The board forced him to resign. He won't take my calls." He says we need distance. Terrence listened and felt no pity rise. That's what people like him do, he said. They protect themselves first. Nia's voice fell to a whisper. What about us? Terrence answered. There is no us to return to. He ended the intercom and stepped away. His phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message was short and venomous. You think you won? Watch your back. Terrence blocked it without responding. He refused to let threats become a new form of control. Over the following weeks, the fallout moved through the industry like weather. Investigations revealed Sterling had a pattern with employees, not a single lapse. Former staff came forward with stories of favoritism and pressure. Clients paused contracts. Board members demanded resignations. Terrence's attorney filed divorce papers with terms that protected Terrence's finances and required medical disclosures. Nia didn't contest the filing. Her signature arrived quickly, as if she understood that fighting would only create more evidence. Terrence scheduled a follow-up appointment at the clinic to review his test results and ask direct questions, leaving no detail untouched. Terrence's friend, DeAndre Pierce, met him for lunch at a diner they'd visited for years. DeAndre watched Terrence's face and spoke carefully. The whole city is talking, DeAndre said. Terrence stirred his drink and replied, They can talk. DeAndre hesitated. Nia has been calling around. She says she's getting treatment. She says she wants to apologize in person. Terrence looked up. I don't need an apology, he said. DeAndre tried again. She's scared. Terrence answered. She should have been scared before she put my health on the line. DeAndre leaned back, finally reading the finality in Terrence's tone. So that's it, DeAndre said. Terrence nodded. That's it, he confirmed. I'm not participating in her repair narrative. As winter approached, Terrence rebuilt his days with purpose rather than distraction. He worked longer hours, not to avoid feelings, but to maintain structure. He canceled shared accounts and separated finances under Lionel's guidance. He changed locks, updated passwords, and moved Nia's remaining belongings into labeled boxes. He bought a camera he had wanted for years and started taking photos on weekends. He didn't chase art. He documented what he saw: city streets, quiet corners, people moving without performance. Photography gave him control over framing, and control mattered after months of deception. Terrence reconnected with friends he had neglected during marriage, not to gossip, but to remember himself in rooms that did not involve Nia. The divorce process continued with clean paperwork, no dramatic calls, no courtroom theater. One cold evening, Terrence left his office and found Sterling Vaughn waiting near his car in the parking garage. Sterling looked different without the polished suit and stage lighting. His clothes hung loose, and his eyes were red at the edges. You took everything from me, Sterling said, voice rough. Terrence kept distance and replied, You threw it away. Sterling stepped closer, trying to regain authority with proximity. I built that company for decades, he said. You didn't have the right. Terrence held his gaze. You didn't have the right to involve my wife, hide an infection, and use your position to do it, he answered. Sterling's breath smelled like alcohol. I could have given her a better life, Sterling muttered. Terrence replied, From where I'm standing, you gave her disease, disgrace, and abandonment. Sterling made a sudden movement as if to shove him. Terrence shifted aside, and Sterling stumbled, catching himself on a concrete pillar. Leave, Terrence said. Next time I will call the police. He got in his car and drove off. Later that night, Nia texted from a new number. My symptoms are worse. The medication isn't working like they said. I'm scared. Please talk to me. Terrence stared at the message for 10 seconds, then deleted it. He did not block the number immediately because he wanted the text saved for legal purposes if needed, but he did not respond. He refused to become her caretaker while she faced the consequences of what she and Sterling had done. Terrence spent that evening sorting photos on his laptop and boxing old albums. He separated items without speech, without ceremony. Wedding photos went into a storage bin. Vacation shots went into another. He labeled them by year and sealed them. He did not destroy them. He simply removed them from daily life, like furniture that no longer fit a room. Months passed. Spring arrived with longer daylight and new routines. Terrence traveled for work to Nashville, then added personal weekends in New Orleans and Santa Fe, taking photos and walking streets without anyone asking where he had been. His photography began to earn quiet interest from colleagues who needed corporate event coverage. The irony did not bother him. He had learned to operate inside rooms that once made him feel safe, but now he entered them without illusions. From mutual acquaintances, he heard Nia had found a junior copywriter job at a small agency across town. She sold her luxury car and moved into a studio apartment in an older building. Terrence filed the updates in his mind like weather reports. Information, not emotion. He kept his focus on his health, his work, and the boundaries Lionel advised him to maintain. One afternoon, Terrence ran into Janelle Hart at a coffee shop. Janelle hesitated before approaching, holding her drink with both hands. "I saw Nia yesterday," Janelle said quietly. Terrence kept his attention on his laptop screen. "That's not my concern," he replied. Janelle continued anyway. "She looks different. She's lost weight. She seems tired all the time. She keeps talking about you." Terrence closed his laptop without slamming it. "People talk when I want to soften what they did," he said. Janelle swallowed. She said she'd give anything to go back. Terrence stood, shouldered his camera bag, and said, "Going back is not available." He walked out without adding more, because explanations invite debate, and he was done debating his own reality. An email arrived from Monique Vaughn months after the gala. The subject line read, "Thank you." Terrence opened it and read her plain words. Monique wrote that the public moment was painful but necessary, and that the investigation revealed Sterling had exposed other women without disclosure. She wrote that lawyers were involved and that Sterling's career was effectively finished in their field. "The truth hurt," Monique wrote, but the lie was worse. Terrence read it twice and replied with a short message. "I'm sorry you were pulled into it. I hope you find peace." He did not add more. He understood he was not the hero of Monique's story. He was simply the person who refused to carry silence for someone else's comfort. A year after the gala, Terrence rented a small space for a photography exhibit sponsored by a local arts nonprofit. The photos were not dramatic. They were honest. Street corners, hands on steering wheels, empty chairs, office lobbies after closing time. He titled the collection Evidence because that word matched the way his life had changed. People came, spoke quietly, and left notes in a guest book. Terrence did not make speeches. He did not post anything designed for attention. After the exhibit, he returned home to an apartment he had chosen alone, with furniture that fit his needs, not anyone else's image. That night, Nia sent another message. "I understand you won't forgive me. I'm not asking now. I just want you to know I see the damage. Goodbye." Terrence deleted it without response. Terrence heard updates about Sterling through professional circles without seeking them out. Sterling attempted to relocate and rebrand himself in another state, but his name followed him through background searches and whispered warnings. A former client told Terrence, "Nobody wants to be tied to that." Terrence didn't celebrate loudly. He simply recognized cause and effect. He learned Nia's health issues continued. She kept taking medication and dealing with side effects. She no longer posted glossy photos or attended high-profile events. Her world had narrowed into work, appointments, and quiet survival. Terrence did not take pleasure in her pain, but he also did not volunteer comfort. He held one rule steady. He would not trade his peace for someone else's relief. The divorce reached its final stage with little drama. Lionel called Terrence and said, "She signed everything. No contest. All assets divided as agreed." Lionel added, "She left a letter for you." Terrence paused, then said, "No. File it with the records if you need. I'm not reading it." Lionel accepted the instruction. Terrence understood letters can be tools, even when they wear soft language. He returned to editing photos and preparing for a corporate shoot scheduled the next morning. He slept that night without waking, not because he forgot what happened, but because his mind had stopped waiting for an apology that could change anything. Over time, Terrence stopped checking headlines about the scandal. He stopped scanning social media for updates. He removed old mutual connections from his feeds. He narrowed his circle and let silence do its work. He also kept his medical follow-ups consistent until his doctor confirmed he was safe. Terrence did not tell friends details, He only said, "I handled it." He treated his health like any other responsibility, not a shameful secret. When he booked new clients, he focused on deliverables and boundaries. When people asked about his marriage, he used one sentence: "We divorced." He did not explain. Explanations invite opinions, and opinions do not repair reality. One late summer afternoon, Terrence received a small envelope from Lionel marked "Final Copies." Terrence filed the paperwork in a cabinet labeled "Closed." He did not keep it on his desk. He did not reread it. He made dinner, cleaned the kitchen, and packed his camera bag for a weekend shoot. His life looked ordinary from the outside again, which was exactly what he wanted. He did not want a public victory lap. He wanted a private return to stability on his own terms. He learned that the most satisfying kind of justice is the kind that ends the conversation, not the kind that extends it. Terrence also learned to watch people differently. He listened for inconsistencies and watched for avoidance. He stopped accepting vague explanations from anyone who owed him clarity. When someone offered him praise for how he handled it, he redirected the topic. He did not want to be defined by betrayal. He wanted to be defined by what he built afterward. He poured energy into his work and his photography, and he kept his home calm. He started running early mornings and let the physical routine reset his mind. At night, he read books he had ignored for years. None of these habits were dramatic. They were simple. Simple habits, repeated, rebuilt him. When a second year after the gala arrived, Terrence realized he could think of Nia without his chest tightening. The memory stayed, but it no longer controlled his breath. That shift didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like distance. He accepted that he would always remember the moment he read those messages and saw his marriage in plain text. He also accepted he would never again hand someone blind trust as if it were a requirement. He did not become bitter in conversation. He simply became precise. Precision kept him safe. He also recognized that love without accountability is not love. It is risk. He stopped romanticizing the past and started respecting the present. Terrence received an inquiry from a large firm to photograph a leadership retreat. The client chose him because they wanted real moments, not staged smiles. Terrence accepted, delivered clean work, and collected payment without fanfare. He thought about the night of the gala and the way stage smiles had filled a room right before truth broke it open. He did not dwell. He used the memory as a reminder. Appearances are easy. Integrity is harder. After the job, he walked alone near the waterfront and took photos of people watching the water in silence. He liked those frames because they did not ask the viewer to believe anything that wasn't shown. A mutual acquaintance mentioned Nia had tried to date again and struggled. Terrence did not ask questions. He did not request details. He knew rebuilding after public collapse is difficult, but he also knew collapse begins with private decisions. He had nothing to add. He kept his focus on his own life. He planned a trip to Seattle for a weekend photo walk and booked a small hotel near Pike Place. He traveled light and moved through the city without answering to anyone. At night, he reviewed his shots and felt quiet satisfaction in the simple fact that his days belonged to him. That ownership mattered more than revenge ever did. One evening, Terrence saw Sterling's name on a forwarded industry email about a minor legal settlement. He read only enough to understand Sterling had lost more than status. He had lost credibility. Terrence closed the email and deleted it. He did not need the details to feel validated. He had already seen the consequence unfold from the inside. He also knew that public shame is not the only punishment. The deeper punishment is waking up every day and realizing your own choices built the cage you live in. Terrence did not wish harm on Sterling. He simply refused to offer mercy that Sterling never offered anyone else. That refusal was not cruelty. It was a boundary. Terrence's friend DeAndre asked him one day, "Do you ever miss her?" Terrence answered honestly, "I miss the person I thought I married." DeAndre nodded. Terrence added, "I don't miss the reality." That distinction mattered. The memory of Nia laughing at dinner, planning vacations, texting him jokes, all of it existed. It just no longer represented the whole truth. Terrence learned that nostalgia can be selective. He refused selective thinking because selective thinking had kept him quiet for too long. He became the kind of man who tells himself the full story, even when the full story hurts. Terrence also made peace with the fact that some people disliked what he did at the gala. A former colleague said, "You embarrassed the company." Terrence replied, "They used the company as cover. That's the real embarrassment." He did not argue further. He understood some people protect institutions even when institutions protect harm. Terrence refused that logic. He believed clarity is a responsibility, not a hobby. He also believed private harm becomes public eventually, whether someone forces it into the light or not. In his case, he chose timing and evidence instead of letting rumors shape the outcome. That choice protected him legally and mentally. He did not regret it. On a quiet Saturday, Terrence visited a storage unit and opened the bins of old photos. He did not sit down and cry. He flipped through images like a person reviewing documents. He saw their wedding day, their first apartment, their vacations, their holiday dinners. He noticed moments where Nia's smile looked genuine and moments where it looked practiced. He didn't accuse those photos of lying. He simply stopped pretending a photo equals a promise. He closed the bins and left them stored. He didn't throw them away because he didn't need to erase history to move forward. He just needed history to stop demanding his loyalty. Terrence began mentoring a younger coworker who was going through a difficult breakup. He did not tell his own story in detail. He offered practical advice. Protect your finances, document patterns, trust actions over speeches, and prioritize health. The coworker asked, "How do you stay calm?" Terrence answered, "Calm is a decision you practice when you're hurt." He did not say it to sound wise. He said it because he had lived it. Terrence understood that anger can turn into noise that other people use to dismiss you. He chose calm because calm keeps the facts visible. That lesson shaped how he moved in every part of life. Years later, when Terrence drove past the Harbor Grand on a work trip, he did not feel the urge to stop. He did not park and stare. He simply acknowledged the building as a place where truth reached the surface. That was all. He returned to his hotel, edited photos, and slept. The past remained in the past because he refused to reopen it for entertainment. He understood that closure is not a conversation you have with the person who harmed you. Closure is a condition you create for yourself. Terrence created it through routine, boundaries, and work that reflected his real values. He did not forgive Nia in a sentimental way. He released her from his daily attention. That release was his freedom. Terrence kept one final habit. He never again ignored his instincts. When something felt off, he investigated quietly and directly. He learned that respect does not require blindness. He also learned that marriage does not excuse risk. In future relationships, he stated his boundaries early: honesty, health transparency, and accountability. Some people found that too rigid. Terrence accepted that response as useful information. He preferred losing a potential relationship over losing his stability. He built a life that did not depend on someone else's permission. His apartment stayed clean, his finances stayed clear, and his friendships stayed real. He liked the calm. He protected it like a person who finally understands the cost of chaos. One evening, Lionel called to confirm there were no remaining legal obligations. "You're fully clear," Lionel said. Terrence thanked him and ended the call. Terrence sat by his window and watched city lights blink on as daylight faded. He thought about the word consequence and how it had threaded through everything. Nia's choices had consequences. Sterling's choices had consequences. Terrence's choices had consequences too, including the choice to expose them publicly. Terrence accepted his own consequences without apology. He did not pretend he acted gently. He acted accurately. Accuracy mattered more than gentleness when health and safety were involved. He stood up, turned off the room light, and let the quiet settle. He didn't feel empty. He felt finished. Terrence's camera sat on the table near the door, ready for the next morning's shoot. He packed extra batteries, cleaned the lens, and placed his memory cards in a labeled case. The routine felt grounding. He looked around his home and saw no traces of Nia's carefully arranged objects. The space reflected his choices now, not a shared narrative. He did not feel the urge to text anyone about it. He did not need witnesses. He poured a glass of water, drank it slowly, and went to bed. His mind replayed nothing that night. It didn't need to. The story had already been written in evidence, signatures, and consequences. He closed his eyes and slept like a man who no longer owed anyone access to his peace. The next day, Terrence photographed a corporate team in a bright conference room. People smiled for group shots, then relaxed into candid conversations. Terrence captured the moments between pose frames because those moments showed what was real. He delivered the photos on schedule, received a thank you email, and moved on. This was what his life looked like now. Steady work, quiet growth, and controlled access. After the shoot, he met DeAndre for lunch, and they talked about sports, travel, and small plans. No one mentioned Nia. Terrence noticed he didn't need the topic to be avoided. It simply wasn't central anymore. That was the most honest marker of healing he had experienced. Later that week, Terrence updated his portfolio website. He chose images that carried clean lines and simple truth, not dramatic effects. He avoided captions that told viewers what to feel. He let the photos speak. He also removed an old about paragraph that mentioned "my wife and I," replacing it with a short line. Terrence Caldwell is a photographer focused on honest corporate and documentary work. He saved the edit and closed the browser. It was a small change, but it mattered. He didn't want his identity tied to a broken marriage. He wanted his identity tied to what he did with his time and talent. He kept making quiet changes like that, and those changes added up. Terrence received a final forwarded update from a mutual contact. Nia had moved again, closer to a clinic, and her work hours were reduced. Terrence did not respond. He did not pass the message along. He did not ask questions. He understood that continuing to monitor her life would keep him tethered to it. He chose detachment with intention. He deleted the update and returned to planning a weekend trip to Chicago for street photography. He booked a museum visit, a walking route, and a simple dinner reservation for one. When he arrived in Chicago, he moved through crowds without feeling lonely. He felt free. The difference between loneliness and freedom, he learned, is whether you're missing someone who protects you or missing someone who harms you. Terrence missed nothing harmful. On the train back, Terrence reviewed images on his camera screen. He saw a man helping an elderly woman with a suitcase, a child laughing at a street performer, and a couple holding hands without looking at their phones. He didn't idealize them. He simply recorded what he saw. Terrence understood love still existed in the world. It just required integrity to sustain it. He wasn't afraid of love. He was afraid of deception, and he respected that fear as a signal, not a weakness. When the train pulled into his station, he went home, unpacked, and placed his camera on the table again. His life had become a set of routines built on truth. That was the outcome he cared about most. Months later, Terrence attended another gala for a client, not as a spouse, but as hired staff. The ballroom had the same lighting, the same polished smiles, the same curated conversations. Terrence moved through it without tension. He captured photos, delivered them, and left early. Outside in the cool night air, he noticed how his body no longer braced for surprises the way it used to. He had learned to prepare, document, and exit when necessary. He didn't mistake that for paranoia. He called it wisdom earned at a cost. Terrence drove home and parked in his own space, unlocked his own door, and entered a quiet home that belonged only to him. No lies waited there. Terrence sometimes thought about the exact second Nia's glass shattered on the ballroom floor. He remembered the sound because it marked the moment the private line met public reality. He also remembered the moment he pressed send on his email because that action made the truth durable. Terrence did not regret that durability. He believed the people who can cause harm in secret rely on other people's silence to survive. He refused to be silent. That refusal changed his life, but it also protected him. It also protected others, as Monique's email made clear. Terrence accepted that his choice carried sharp edges. He also accepted that sharp edges are sometimes necessary to cut through thick lies. In a quiet conversation with DeAndre, Terrence said, "I used to think being a good husband meant absorbing discomfort." DeAndre asked, "What do you think now?" Terrence answered, Being a good man means respecting yourself enough to confront what's real. DeAndre nodded slowly. Terrence continued, support without honesty is a trap. He said it plainly, not as advice for others, but as a rule he would live by. Terrence did not become cruel. He became exact. He checked in with himself before agreeing to anything. He asked direct questions. He watched the answers. He chose people who could meet truth without collapsing into excuses. The following year, Terrence's studio expanded. He hired an assistant for editing and scheduling, kept his books clean, and built a calendar that protected his weekends. He visited his mother more often, called his brother regularly, and kept friendships alive. His life stayed private and steady. He did not post long reflections online. He did not create speeches about overcoming betrayal. He did not seek applause. The satisfaction came from waking up without dread and going to bed without suspicion. That daily calm was the best outcome he could have bought with any amount of money, and he earned it through choices that honored reality. He kept honoring reality, because reality, unlike lies, does not shift when you look at it. On a quiet evening, Terrence opened the drawer where his old wedding ring sat in a small box. He didn't hold it up to the light. He didn't talk to her. He simply looked at it as an object from a finished chapter. He closed the box and put it back. He understood that the ring represented vows, and vows are only meaningful when both people respect them. Terrence didn't hate Nia at that moment. He didn't love her either. He felt distance, and distance felt like health. He walked to his kitchen, made tea, and returned to editing photos. His life did not pause for memories anymore. It moved forward. Before the story ends, drop one word that describes Nia's choices: betrayal, reckless, or karma, and tell me what you would have done in Terrence's position. Then hit subscribe for the next story where the truth lands even harder. When Terrence thought about the whole arc, he did not reduce it to revenge. He reduced it to truth and consequence. Nia and Sterling built a private world on deception, and that world collapsed when exposed to light. Terrence built a new life on documented fact and firm boundaries, and that life stayed standing. He learned that strength does not always look like reconciliation. Sometimes strength looks like refusing contact, refusing negotiation, and refusing to let someone rewrite what happened. Terrence chose that kind of strength, and it gave him peace that did not depend on anyone else's remorse. He turned off his laptop, set his alarm for the morning, and went to bed with a steady mind. The end.